The chair recognizes Senator the Honorable Reuben Rahming.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam President. Now, Madam President, historically, the Senate has been a place of elder statesmen, and I don't say that to be rhetorical to any age, but a place where they would have persons who would bring perspective or even a different view to legislations that are being presented. And the Senate in itself has the privilege and ability from that position of wisdom, which it would have possessed historically, to even send a bill back to the lower house for revision. This bill in and of itself, to me, is a very, very good attempt. I think no one in here, no right-thinking person in here would assume that this bill or any other bill is anything more superior than a net. It will have holes, but it's the best intent to capture as best as possible the desired intent. I think seldom, if any, legislation could be called anything but a net, because the level of perfection has eluded us worldwide from time immemorial. Many times the devil and the danger, whether intended or otherwise, is in the details. There's a saying on Sesame Street, you know, you guys remember Sesame Street? They say that's about the size where you put your eyes. That's about the size of it. So the big becomes a little when you step back a bit, because that's about the size of it. Many times you will find, even in draftsmanship, that it's always good to have somebody with fresh eyes to look over what is you're doing, because your mind can become so fixated on the intent that it could actually miss things that are very, very important. We've seen it even in this place and other places where sometimes a simple word was misplaced, and we know in law that could change everything. And bills have been sent back for those adjustments. Seeing that the Minister of Health led off this debate in the lower house, I will lead this out using the exact same scripture text that he used. When he started it, he quoted from Revelation chapter 2, and he used chapter 22 and 2. The Minister of Health did when he started off this debate. And like most things, people have perspective, but here's the full context of that. Revelation chapter 22 starts off, says, and he showed me a pure river of water, of life, clear as crystal, proceeding out of the throne of God and the Lamb of God. And this is what the minister quoted, verse 2. And in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, was there a tree of life, which bore 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nation. That's why he said it, you know. Let me finish with the other one. And there shall be, and there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God, and of the Lamb shall be in it, and the servant shall serve him. And it says, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their forehead. And the final one says, and there shall be no night there, and they need no candle, neither light from the sun, for the Lord giveth them light, and they shall shine on. The thing about it is, we need to use things in context. When it says the leaves are for the healing of the nation, that was a specific time and a specific place. And unless the other conditions surrounding that is met, where you find any tree that brings 12 forms of fruit, and I'm an arboriculturalist, and one of my projects is to produce a single mango tree that bears at least 7 kinds of mangoes. And I've done it before, but I want to do one for my yard. But this doesn't even speak to that. Why am I saying this? Not only that it's out of context, I want us to understand too, even when we go down things historically, as Senator Pistock did, we got to realize what was then ain't what we got now. And this very bill proves that point over and over again. We're talking about cultivating cannabis, and in the cultivation, being able to vary it by strains, potency, chemical constituency, and manipulating it. Even when the Bible speaks about bread and how good bread ain't the same now, ma'am. The wheat that we use is so bleached out. The flour that we use is so bleached out. The wheat is hybridized. In many instances, got animal or insect DNA in it. We know that things ain't the way. Water ain't what it was back then. Most of our healthcare issues is from the food that are so processed now that it ain't really food. The fruits we get here are cut at such a young age just so they can make the transshipment journey that by the time it reaches, you get young fruit force ripened. What I'm simply saying is that we need to be careful because things aren't always what they are. And so when we look at things, obviously it has a standpoint that represents the full purity and potency of a thing. This bill is important. And sadly, this bill and the issue of cannabis is a whirlwind that we simply have to face. And this bill, even though doing what I think it is fair to say, the vast majority of Bahamian people in part support, especially medicinal use. It still raises a lot of questions. And I hope we're respectful enough to hear the questions and just to appreciate them so that it add perspective maybe for further deliberation even later on.
I think it's perfect.
I already said that, sir.
Yeah, we're open to making amendments.
Please proceed, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. Because I fully want us to appreciate that legislatively the time has come. This bill addresses a number of things which I think is well written. I think the efforts by the government to actually control every aspect of the marijuana from its legal point of view, I think that is commendable. I think it's going to be a little hard to even find more diligent effort to manage it in terms of that level of cannabis or weed that is naturally now being allowed in for the function of medicinal use.
Absolutely.
No, I'll be grateful. I just want to talk. It's not left or right for me. I just really want to just talk. All right? And I commend that effort.
Yes.
A couple of points I want to raise. First of all, when we look at this, we're getting people so hyped up on the market value and the monies that could be made in it, that in focusing so much so on that, it causes us many times to run with our heads in the sky and not looking at where our feet may be trotting, and in some instances not accurately at where we're going.
We have a titan at the wheel. Titan.
The thing is, madam, currently right now, there's about 5,000 people in the Bahamas who would fit at this time, this category, for medicinal cannabis to be a consideration in their health regime.
And what is the amount of tourists?
Yeah, it was sent around. It was sent around. It was sent around. Some quoted from your source. If you object to it, stand. It's not a big deal for me. The thing about it is, when we look at the size of our archipelago, when we look at the volume of people in that, the Bahamas in and of itself as a market has limitations, but the Bahamas in producing a quality product for the international market is very, very positive. We have, right now though, there are many who are actually thinking in terms of this thing, that we're gonna soon and swiftly be that powerhouse that is gonna take some of that international shares or market shares from the U.S. and from Canada. Well, Jamaica has been doing it much longer than us, and they had not begun to have that amount of impact, despite their culture being more steeped into the sacramental use of the drug. But I just want us to be cautioned that if a country with 2+ million have to go through that growing pain, even us will have to go through.
Okay.
That our market strain, our market forces will determine a lot of things. And notwithstanding the fact that the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas has taken extreme lengths in legislation to create many different facets of opportunities within the cannabis industry.
Yes.
It is still a realistic thing to consider that market forces in itself initially is going to constrain a lot of persons. And most likely you're going to still find that the few select individuals by capability and valuation will have a jump on the market and the market forces. It doesn't change the fact that those who have the endurance to cultivate their product can still tap into the international market forces. But it's not going to be, maybe in the medium term, the panacea that persons have been seeking in this regard. There are some matters that arises out of this, Madam President, that has caused some concern in my mind. One of them, when it comes down to the religious use of cannabis and the possible doors that will be opened by it. And again, I basically confess that the government in this instance is still constrained. Because it's my understanding that even in the process of this going to court, and if I take what the Attorney General said in his opening and extrapolate it to us, it is highly likely that resisting that is going to stand up to judicial scrutiny in the end. Now, some may ask then, if that's the case, don't be the hand that subscribe it, let the courts do it. Because courts in the country aren't elected. They're appointed and created as a separate part of government for a shared independence, rather than the government doing it themselves and being the one to legislate a sacrament. Those are the opinion of persons that are out there. But herein lies some of the problems that we must consider in this regard. Because when it comes to religious freedom, there cannot actually be discrimination. Religion freedom from the hands of the government and under the law must allow accessibility across the board in terms of the expression of one's religious acumen. And so even in this law, when we see that in its writing, especially in 49 of this bill, section 49, when it speaks about religious use, it exclusively gave the benefit of the use of the cannabis to just simply the Rastafarian faith. As the law, which we must understand, is in a religious setting, they have right to choose how they want to worship their God. Notwithstanding we calling ourselves a Christian nation and we made the commitment to abide by Christian values. Yet we are not an oppressive country where we seek to sideline any religion. So now we see here, despite, I believe, what is the sincere attempt, especially because there had been mainly one religious denomination / faith driving for this form of sacrament. In the writing thereof, it should have been basically under just pure religion. Then let's also consider this, now that we have taken a psychoactive drug and endorsed it as a sacrament, what is there to stop other religious entity or persons who form a religious entity now to determine that for their sacrament they are in need of other psychotropic drugs, such as some who use magic mushrooms and other kind of drugs, but now being able to challenge this very same thing under their same guise of religion. And then it seems, as presented, that this would have satisfied the Rastafarian community, but obviously from statements made by the representatives of segments of the community, because I only saw one leadership name, it would have been demonstrated.
Go ahead, sorry.
I thought you were being prophetic in what I said. I simply said it cannot be representative of all. It came from the Rastafarian community, but I cannot say it's representative of all because there was only one name attached to what I'm about to say. You follow me?
Yeah, I got you.
All right. In this case, one of the persons in a reported article write clearly, and I think I'll just quote him on this: members of the Rastafarian community are voicing their objection to the cannabis bill, which was passed in the House of Assembly this week, so just passed. So the bill recognizes cannabis as a holy sacrament for the Rastafarian faith and outlines access to cannabis for religious use. Executive board members of the House of Rastafari, and that's Prophet Jah McKinney Bow, that's why I said an individual. If they legislate it the way that does not work for the Rastafarian community, we will not change our stance to go along with the law. We will continue to go the way of our faith, and we will see the government back in the Supreme Court, where we already had them. So we're not scared to take the government to court over this. And if I could look through a crystal ball, that's all we see happening. According to Bo, the House of Rastafari does not agree with the use of cannabis being contained in the tabernacle or place of worship, being contained in the tabernacle or place of worship. He said the body is the temple. He said the body is the temple. And I'll stop right there. So basically, he's saying wherever the individual is, he is the temple, so he should be allowed to smoke. Which this bill rightfully, especially because the psychotropic effect of the drug still hasn't changed despite it being legalized for medical use. It still must be handled responsibility, and it's gone through painful efforts to accommodate in proper restricted environments, your temple, even your homes, which is a little risky, but that's an over generous extension. So you could do it at your home because all the worship in the same place. But now we see the level of defiance. And the fear here, because I'm going someplace with this, is that I view this as an effort of containing Pandora. But you remember that world when I spoke about that was coming down the way and had to be faced by the government? It's still going to come. And I'm going to show you some of the things that make me think and believe why. And then, not only to the Rastafarians, I mean, I got to say this to the people of my faith, Christian people, man. We got over 1,000 churches in this country, just in the country, and just in this little Nassau, little New Providence. And if you just average 50 people in the church who dedicated and faithful to their word, let's call all of them. All of them just have 50. That's 50,000 people. Public opinion changed public policy. I saw the combined House of Rastafari in the Bahamas don't have those volumes. This is a democratic place. So we can learn a lesson from some of these people. Some of these Bahamian citizens who are of other faiths. If you believe your faith so strong, then don't just sit down there and say, Pastor, go there by yourself. Stand up for your faith. So Lyndon say, could be put in the same position. If you aren't willing to fight for it, you don't deserve it. Faith without works is dead. You can go behind your pew and pray all you want. You can go send the Christian Council after people. But government smart, They know them unions who really ain't got no support. But they have legal status. People got to be able to see you backing your leaders. And then they watch you when you criticize your own leaders, when you're fighting, then when your leaders go before any government. All there is them pork cake with the ain't a bite. So the power of the church is being diluted. This country was built, majority rule was built from the pulpits of this church. So Lyndon had the insight to follow that momentum, and it drove him through. Those Baptist preachers and things back in those days, it moved the nation. Now where are we? I don't condemn the Rastas. It's their rights. And I will stand for the right of anyone even if I disagree with them. If it's your right, it is your rights. Because if you could do it to the Rastafarian and hinder their religious freedom, what do you think the Catholic or Baptist or Anglican or Seventh-day, you think they safe? This is how we need to look at life, So if the door can be open for an illicit drug to be used for sacrament, it's not a right or wrong thing. The door is open for the same expression in other areas as relate to religion. Even if the door is closed legislatively, constitutionally, I'm not a lawyer, but any reasonable lawyer will know that genie is out of the box. It's just a matter who's willing to push it. And then we have some other concerns that will despite may challenge the government's best effort to ensure that this drug is properly used, because cannabis is still illegal. It's legal when it's done according to law. All right? And so here it is, for the purposes of religious use, you don't use medical marijuana. But marijuana has a higher level of controls. So then that means if you're going to legalize it for religious use, then the regular ganja must have a place to be cultivated. Though controls are in it, it's still the medical ganja. And the medical cannabis is the same as the weed on the street in this regard. The natural response of the human body is to build tolerance. So over a period of time, to get the same effect, you gotta up the dose. So if you need a certain level 1 to reach nirvana or whatever spiritual plane you need to commune with your God, your own natural body will fight against that over time, and you'll realize that the same thing ain't getting you to the same place. Ain't getting you to the same place. It's a scientific fact. It's a scientific fact of antibiotics. It's a scientific fact of anything. It's a scientific fact of drinking, which they've been doing it for years. And you get to the point of it's going to get to that level. So there will still be on, and then we know the illegal market is still going to be there. So let me just summarize. It's been a fight. The legal, I don't personally recommendation. If you had listened to what I'm saying, I'm explaining, not to you, to the people, the gamut of this. I'm not even trying to impress or get your support. That don't matter to me. I'm here to speak the truth. That's it. That's it. No, the master can't disagree with me because the fact is the body builds up tolerance. That's
It's for their religious purposes.
Listen, I ain't saying nothing about the religion. I'm saying the fact is if the drug is used to help you get to a state of religious plane, this is not a for or against, It's a statement of fact. To get to that level, whether medically or psychotropically, for whatever helps you, obviously, it increases. That's a fundamental fact. That's undeniable. When I went off to college, and I was studying a series of things, and one was also pastoral studies, and I took a whole different course. Course means direction. Because I believe a person who wants to lead people, and it's not diminishing the Bible, all you can do is preach and you think you get it good. But how you can address people in life when you don't want to have an understanding of law and politics and this and socioeconomic stuff and economy, so you could help guide your people. That's what Jesus did. All the Bible give you all kind of advice, flora, fauna, civic, culture, history. You got to be sufficiently well versed. And one of the things I deliberately took was addictive studies. To understand these things and how people go through these things, including even going to places when persons go through these things and have to go through withdrawals and all the other different things. Been there. I don't talk about myself, but this is not off the cuff, off the head kind of thing. And also ministers and people and families have to learn to deal with these things when they come up. I know of a specific case where twins, both of them experimented with marijuana. One ended up in St. Louis. But my point isn't, again, left or right, because listen, I'm a practical man. This can pass. Both parties support the bill. I'm speaking simple truth. No fanfare, no applause, not even your opinion. I'm going to speak my truth here today. And to hope it informs or enlightens persons. And then there is a concern, and monitoring is going to be very, very heavy, especially as related to that, because of the privilege of using it in different places, and to make sure that abuse is not obtained. I appreciate the efforts that I see in the legislation to try to defend minors against it. And why I would disagree with the Rastafarians on this note, clearly, openly, because the desire to, and I can appreciate your body is the temple of the Lord, we believe that too. But what your temples should not do, and this is an interesting thing about religious freedom, I can't force you to believe what I want to believe.
No, it's free will.
I can't force you to take my sacrament. And unlike the bread and the wine, if I sitting in the car and you smoking your sacrament, you're forcing me to take it. That's why I support the government's view of restraining public use. And I think it's a generous overreach to say homes and everything else. That is good. But you can't force that. I ain't saying the Rastafarian can't go on the streets and preach. Because what go in your head, there's a filter that can filter all that out. What go in your body, where's the filter? So I would hope that children in the homes are properly protected, as we see the intent of the law is trying to do, but we know the risk is very, very high. So we cannot support that being, well, I see no reason why support that being done openly. And then when we look at this, we look at matters relating to even the penalties. So before I get to that, let me simply recap. The potential for marijuana is great. Fabric, clothes, even building materials. You see what I'm saying? It is great. We are literally in the development segment, a developing nation. We first class in tourism, but industry, we just starting to grow. That's going to take a lot. I appreciate the restraints that is trying to make sure it stay Bohemianized. But I know the reality of my Bahama land, that those people who get all that money right now are going to jump shot the market. Because there are two ways to beat you. The government could give you all the opportunity you can. You can't blame the government. But then market forces play the real game. They could beat you out to the market to the point, whereas it ain't even advantageous for you even try. Or you drop out. And when you see the number of people losing because the certain class of boys, we got a bunch of boys in the country, grouping that called boys, are able to control the market legally and squeeze you out or even block you out before you begin, or even then you see when there's end up being restrictions on certain things, should that come, there's not much in here at all, buy you out. And then at the end of the day, we end up seeing one block still have control again. That's the nature of our society. You can't stand here and deny it, all right, in that regard. And then the religious freedom aspect, we must be prepared for the clear and present danger of others in our community now riding the wave of that right to be able to not only marijuana, but other psychotropic drugs and call it guys under their religious practices. And also when you do something as a religious practice, it should not be labeled by just one simple entity. Because you're restricting others, and it's their choice whether they want to use it or not. And then we come down to an interesting thing that I do have a problem with. Do I see, and I could appreciate the intent, with the penalties as it relate to cannabis. And it is reasonable, because we know cannabis is still illegal, non-medical regulated or religious cannabis is illegal. All right? Before I get there, let me talk about the issue of expungement. I full-heartedly believe in expungement, I have a problem with the language we throwing out with it. We do something to them. See, you got to realize with the law, when you do one, it applies across the board. The law of the Commonwealth of Bahamas had something say you don't deal with weed. You got caught with weed. Small or large, you broke the law. The problem is in this way. That is not an apology. Like we did that to them. No, you did that to yourself. Now, I believe in any instances that when a man has proven himself, that happened 5 years ago, that happened whatever else ago, and he's been of good standing or whatever else, man, you can't hold him back. You catch what I'm saying? It's not a problem with the expungement. It's a problem with the language, because if the language keep going down the road, we are now telling people, you know what, we're sorry for letting the law hurt you, when you had a choice not to do it like everybody else. That's all I'm simply saying. The lessons in discipline is when the punishment is had and the grace is given, that brings appreciation. Because now we're going to get to a point where we are right now, where you're going to have persons with 1 ounce of weed whose punishment will be a ticket. So they pay a ticket. And we need to consider, when we weigh out the cost-benefit analysis of the odds of one individual getting catch with 1 ounce of weed, right? The grass, from a business perspective on the streets, what's the cost-benefit of the dude who may get a chance of getting catch with some weed, 1 ounce of weed, once every so often? Have you ever considered that this in itself now create another so-called quasi-legal business? Whereas, you know, because if I can go into business where I can make $1,000 a week and the fine is $200 a week,
Not for him. Not for him.
you know?
Not for him, though.
Huh?
Because the fellow who said it got this-
No, there's different levels. No, they're different. The thing about it is, listen to me. Remember, listen to me. Listen, I am saying a business, but you aren't listening yet. Let me finish it, then you will understand. It's not misleading because you're not listening. All right? Let me explain to you why it is a business. And it will end up being that, despite what I keep saying, the good intent of the bill. All right? Let me show you something. If whoever thinks that on them. So if you get catch with this, right? You pay fine, right? Right? Good, he paid a fine. It's not what I just said. So if I could sell $1,000 worth of these, right? And I get catch one, mind you, the what you call distribution only applies when you get caught and how you handle it. It is never called distribution if I only have 1 ounce of it.
Okay.
Now you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what your intent is. I only have 1 ounce. And under the law, 1 ounce is not distribution. What you do, all right, 1 ounce is the penalty for 1 ounce if you're caught with it. The penalty if for 1 ounce, because I know that the act still apply because cannabis is still illegal. But the loophole is with 1 ounce, you pay the fine. Isn't that it?
I thought they could confiscate your badge too.
Whatever they want to do. Whatever. No. I'm not talking with somebody who has this legally. We talk with persons who have 1 ounce of it. Let me show you something. Yeah, you probably deal with it. Somebody even who has, someone who even has a license as it relates to law. And with the medical cannabis, they're only allowed to carry up to 30-day supply. Let me know if I'm wrong. I'm not here to be wrong. A 30-day supply, and that's reasonable because that's just like medication. You get 30-day supply of any particular medication and so on and so forth. What we face here with is this. We're going to have young people who perceive things differently. How many of y'all would disagree that when the cannabis thing first came out, even the thought of it, and probably even still now, despite how it's being stressed in medical, how many of y'all would disagree that there's some of them out there that thinking, boy, I can grow weed? I'm not bleeding the government for it, you know, but we got to know the nature and the thinking of our people. Some of them will read the law, and you know what their thinking is going to be? Oh, you know, I'm going to go ahead and get this loophole. I'm trying to bring to you the street level understanding of this, because many times we pass laws in here, and many times people say, it's so above my head, I ain't get it, and still end up in jail because they didn't consult or didn't get whatever else around it. So now you're going to have the fellas on the street. You know why I brought this here? Because I sit there and I talk with a couple of them, you know, and I said, let me go to this place and show them what some people on the street is thinking and watch their reaction. You jump to your head game instead of dealing with your people according to knowledge. Mom, there are young people there right now. Right now. And I did some other inquiries because some people know me, who are literally thinking now that, boy, you know what this means? I can carry this weed, need nothing to happen. Mind, they even ain't here the $200. Mind, they still even in here that the other criminal enforcement acts that are stated in here and referenced in here still are enacted. They are hearing this. So one saying, boy, oh, you know, with that 1 ounce of weed, you know what I could do with that? The position is I'm stating views. The position, oh, thank you. The position is I am stating views that exist out there. And if you're a person of the ground, you tell me you don't exist?
Yeah, I'm sure the government.
All right, and so what I'm saying, like I said, what I am saying is if we appreciate it, we can anticipate it. But if you, please sir, I'm speaking. But if you dismiss these, then the very same people we are trying to help, even with expungement and everything else, is going to be driven because there's going to be a lot of people out there who get this sort of misunderstanding. How many people as lawyers, and you're a lawyer, end up before the court simply because they're ignorance? That's why they say ignorance is no defense. But they are. So what do we do as legislators? The law says that for law to be enacted, we need to gazette it as well, right? That's a part of the whole process. You know what that means? Public information. I'm just saying in our deliberation and dissemination of this, we need to make sure speak to it also on a grassroots level. Most of the talk has been towards the business owner, the people who see it, seeing the opportunity, seeing this. But the fellow on the side of the road who we going looking for votes for, they're the same ones who thinking on a different level. I know, because when I talk to them, I say, man, boy, Dread, I see that like that. I say, you need to see it like that. Because if you don't see it like that, you're going to run around thinking you can go ahead, and this is probably about 56 beanies right in here, and this ain't even an ounce in weight. This ain't an ounce in weight. And you're going to run around, and you're going to end up with something. Then some of them thinking, oh, man, each time I can pay $125, $250, but small things, pay. By the time I sell this much weed, you know what I can make? I say, brother, you're crazy, you know. I say, you're dumb. That's those who I can talk to on that level. I say, you need to consider yourself. You don't want to then, when you get judged, suddenly become an expert on something because you don't want to go and find out exactly what it takes. I'm saying, help us save some of these people. Break it down more colloquially and be very diligent about it. Because there's even saying now that there's some little fellas in school thinking, now I could roll these up like this. This ain't an ounce, you know. This is less than half ounce right there. And I could do my little thing. Some of them even came to me many times, say, boy, this mean I can grow some in my backyard. I say, you grow some in your backyard, you're going to end up in jail. All I'm giving you is perspectives. It's a perspective and a clear reality that will happen. And the very same people we're trying to save so that they can have business, they can travel, they can get this off their record and other different kind of things. We're not only trying to save them, we want to prevent them from doing it. Because this is what some of them seeing from the exemption. They're not saying that the person who, even if you carry medical marijuana, you only supposed to have a certain amount on you. You catch what I'm saying? Even with medical marijuana, you only supposed to have a certain amount on you. They thinking marijuana. And if you have a certain amount on you, even in religious use, there's a special section just for that. That's why I say this is diligent. There's a special section just for that. So we simply must consider these things and understand and do the simple things, which is simply communicate as best you can. Let people know as best you can. It's simply because, listen, I already told you before, don't get emotional over it. I'm just simply saying what I know and experience on the ground, because we sit and we deal with people. Have you ever counseled somebody who had drug addiction? Have you ever counseled with some woman who's been raped? Huh? Have you ever counseled with families, have to do an interdiction to go with someone who's an alcoholic? but I live that. And when I go there, I can't go there talking like I'm so smart. I gotta find where the man is or where the woman, and I gotta reach them where they are. All I'm simply saying is consider how some people are viewing it. I've said this with even in our administration, you know, sometimes we talk so factual or, oh, check the record. I said, people don't check the record. People listen to what you say. So sometimes talk to their level. That's all I'm simply saying. So we must do the best we can as it relates to the execution and deliberation of this to be able to ensure that there is actually no abuse, notwithstanding what is written. And then I still agree with the simple fact that you could still only do your best. So I commended the draftman on this from the beginning because I could see the intent. You follow me, Ryan? I can see the intent and I can see the diligence, but I also can see how some people, and you can't save everybody, through their own folly, will look at some of these things, misinterpret it, and abuse it. We have a very, very good program with the community policing. We have a lot of intervention from a lot of other different societies. What I simply recommend is partner with them. In many instances, don't even just give them information. They know how to reach their people. Support them and let them disseminate certain things directly to how people where to go. Let them drive these strong warnings into a lot of our school children because peer pressure is serious. You can say what you want, but that rumor running around school, them children gonna believe that. And they gotta act on that. And then when they get catch with something, they end up in reform school. Or if they're over 18, they end up not only just getting a penalty, but actually being convicted and therefore qualifying for the same expungement sometime soon. This is not a panacea. This is something we have to face. We are facing it, and we'll have to roll with the punches as regard to this. This issue would have been settled in court eventually in any event. And the medical use is beneficial to a lot of people. There is place in the global market for us, but there will be a battle of market shares. There'll be a battle of market shares. There's not everything a government can do. But I hope at the end of the day, we just brace ourselves for the expected challenge and also do our best to simplify the communication. With that, Madam President, with that I rest.
Thank you for your contribution, Senator Honorable Rahming. As many? Thank you, Senator Reuben Rahming. Are you tabling some? Are you tabling something that you need to table?
I'm tabling it for.
Please execute your signature and put on the date so that I can pass it on to the clerk. Provided there's nothing in there, I wouldn't want to touch it. But if you're tabling something, please do so now, Senator Rahming. Greatly appreciate it.